Hey guys, Fortune Heroes from TeamMisplayed here, bringing you a little bit of my insight and discussion on the Mermail archetype. Now, there's many different Mermail cards out there. There's so many that it's too hard to name all of them, but I will give you an insight on which ones actually really help the deck and what cards you can probably tech. Now, there's two types of builds. There's the monomail build, and there's the Gen X build. Both builds are solid. Both builds do exactly what they need to do, which is send waters to the graveyard through discarding, or just control. That is what they're built to do. But I'm going to give you pros and cons on both of them. Now, we're going to start off by talking about monomail, since they're the most recent to top. They're the biggest deck right now, and arguably they're probably in the top 3 decks of the most expensive decks to make. Prophecies being the most expensive to make. Trust me, I've checked. Anyways, so let's talk about the monomails and what the pros and cons of the monomails are. The pro of the con of this deck is that it makes rank 7s really easily. So you got Big Eye and the Gaios. Those are really good cards right there. They lock down your opponent and they take your opponent's cards. You've got really good discard outlets in all the Mermails that discard besides lead, because lead is a really bad discard outlet, honestly. You have really good, I want to say, synergy with all the water monsters. Depending on how you run the deck, you can run certain water monsters over others. This deck has the potential to be really good. Once Evil Storms comes out, it's like this deck will start seeing less and less play, but I believe that if you just side Shadow him for some years, this deck will do fine. But anyways, let's talk about some of the cards that do this deck good. Let's talk about the trap card itself, the one that jumped from like 25 cents to $5 in like a day. Abyssal, great card, honestly. Good tech choice by Billy Break, and it was honestly under the radar. And even my teammate Gun Monkey told me this card's going to be good, and I didn't believe him. And now look, it's a $5 card that's really good. This card allows you to target 3 Mermails in the graveyard, special summon them in defense mode. Their effects are negated and they can't attack, and they're destroyed at the end of the turn. There's great combos with this card, especially getting out Gaios and Big Eye. Those cards are mandatory when it comes to Mermails. So then let's talk about other cards that really help the deck. You have Abystius. He's a +1 if you can do it right. If you can open him and Dragoons up first turn, this card just becomes very broken to you. It's a special summon first off. It's a search for Dragoons and a search for Tias. So you get 2 cards for just discarding 2 cards. So it's really a +0, honestly. But like I said, this deck loves its discard outlets. Megalo is stapled in any Mermail deck possible because you can use it to discard cards you don't need, or if you have like a dead lead in hand, it's your extra discard outlet, and Megalo gets you your traps like Squall and Bisphere. Lead is a really big beater that should be only summoned with Linde or discarded with Mermail effect. Great card to you if you can use its effect. It's alright to loop a card from their hand, but like that's just one time, and then you use it to make a Biscows or a Big Eye, whichever one you like, or whichever one fits the situation. Then you have Pike and Linde, both of them being good in this deck because Pike first turn with Dragoons is still a +2. It's still a +1. Or it's still a +0, let's say, because you're not really plussing or minusing off that play, but you're still controlling your stuff. Linde being not technically necessarily a +2 if you can do it right. Then you have Gunday, which is a great discard card. If you have a Megalo in hand and you have a dead lead, or if you have another level 7, just discard it with Gunday and then you special summon the other monster, and it's just like a free rank 7 right there. This is why this deck runs so well. So some other cards in the deck are the Dragoons, the Marksmen, the Infantry, and the Divas. Those cards work just great. Now, another tech card you can choose is Salvage. Some like Forbidden Lance. I personally don't like Forbidden Lance because it's just too slow. I mean, let's face it, you don't have cards to discard with. Salvage just makes it so much easier in this deck. And then you run your mandatory staples. I run 2 sphere. Usually people would run 3 sphere. Torrential Tribute's not necessary in this deck. I just have it here. Like, my real deck doesn't have torrentials. Anyway, that was Monomails. The cons of this deck is that you run out of answers so quick. Soul, Skill, Macro, or Soul, Macro, and Deep Fissure hurt this deck to the point of it can't be played. So you need because you need your effects, and it just slows down if those cards come down. And another big thing is that like once I've already went through like the deck really does thin itself really fast, but those are like cons of the deck. Like they have big high monsters that bottomless trap hole can really hurt this deck. Also, anything that can banish cards in this deck is just bad for it. Then we'll move on to the Gen X build. Mandatory staples in the Gen X build are pretty much the same, except you drop the whole Monomel engine, which is one Pike, triple TS, triple or lead, and a Megalo if you have Megalo, or Squall if you have Squall. And then you just throw in Controller, Maulin Glacia, because Maulin Glacia is like broken in water decks everywhere. Gores for the extra protection, because this deck doesn't have too much protection. And the controllers and the I run triple salvage in my Gen X build because like you want those cards in hand so you can use Megalo to go off, and it controls the graveyard better in this build so that you can drop Maulin Glacia more. And then you can tech in those torrential tributes, and people still personally like to run triple sphere in this deck, but that's up to preference. Anyways, the pros to this deck is that this deck can get around a lot of other combos, especially the Ophion lock that Evil Swords have on you. This deck does have a out to soul and skill drain sometimes. Like this deck just has a really good matchup against a lot of decks just because it has so many like different diversities. But the cons of the deck really do hurt this deck more than the Monomel build, but the Monomel build itself like is damaged real hard by its things. So like if you open up 2 controllers, you literally just lost all your plus. Your plus just disappears because Undyne can't go with its effect. You have Undyne, just like I said. If Undyne becomes dead after you get a double controller in your hand, unless you Pot of Avarice your controller, which by all means it's all good. You don't have a lot of big monsters in this deck. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 big monsters, and then you have your extra deck cards, which you have to deal with. So this deck does have bad matchups with monsters with big attack points. That's basically a really big one. What other ones? There's not too much else that this deck has problems with. This build itself, like this build like I have, isn't exactly a really good build, so I wouldn't recommend net decking it. Not like I think any of you are going to, but still. Anyways, like it's all based on preference. You can run a lot of different water monsters. There's a lot of Abyss cards themselves. Oh, sorry. Still working on trying to record in DevPro. There we go. There's still a lot of Abyss cards themselves. Like there's different Abyss cards that actually do discard, like Abyss Warrior and Soldier. There's Abyss Turge, which is a Mermail. You have other Mermails in the deck that, or in like you have access to, that really help. Anyways, that's my rant on this deck. Like I said, I personally like the deck. You just have to have the money to run it. Enough said. Anyway, guys, this has been Fortune Heroes with Team Misplay. Signing off. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.